Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming to our first resume workshop event. My name is Sam. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm a member of the University Relations team here at Ford Motor Company. I'm an Associate University Relations Specialist. And I'm excited to be presenting this to you today. Before we get started talking about resumes, I want to start off by talking about Ford. Ford is very proudly a family company. We span the globe and we share ideals all across the world. As a company, we really value service to each other and to the world as a whole and to our customers. Many generations have made memories with us and that included us in their hopes and their dreams and their travels. As a family company, we are ever evolving. We are focusing on service, experiences, software, as well as vehicles. If you want to be a part of this wonderful family company, I invite you to explore our career opportunities on careers.ford.com. If you are attending this live and not watching a recording later, it is April. We post the majority of our university positions in September timeframe. So I would encourage you to check that out again in September if you don't see something that interests you immediately at this time. That's when a lot of our positions will come available. So I will get started here in a second. If you have questions during this workshop, please drop questions in the chat. I got a coworker who's going to monitor those, and we'll have some time towards the end of this workshop that we can go over any specific questions. All right. So wrong screen. For our workshop today, we're going to go through very quickly some high level what Ford positions we have available for university students. We're going to spend a lot of our time going over tips for writing a good resume, which will include some sample sections that we will go into some detail on. After this session, we ask that you review your resume, take some of the things you learned here today, make updates as necessary. If you are attending live, we'll go over more at the end how you will be able to book some time one-on-one with a Ford representative for a critique. And we will get into that more later. So at a high level for university students, Ford has two major programs. The first is our internship program. It is a summer internship. It's 10 to 12 weeks long. Our summer interns get individualized project work plans that they work towards completing while they are here. And there is a presentation element at the end of the internship where you're able to talk about what you're able to accomplish. Our team has an overarching internship program that includes networking opportunities, professional development opportunities, and these internships are a wonderful way to get a feeling for if Ford is where you want to be, and we hope it is, when you finish your education. And the major program we have for recent graduates is our FCG, or Ford College Graduates Program, which is a rotational program, 2 to 3 years in length, depending on which skill team you're joining. Some of them are slightly different. Rotations last from 6 to 12 months, and this program has a kind of similar structure to the summer internship in the fact that there are networking opportunities, professional development that is available to our FCGs. If anyone is a MBA candidate or is considering getting their MBA, we have a similar program called our leadership program that is very similar that you could look into as well. But focus today is on resumes, so I definitely want to make sure we spend the most of our time here. Your resume has a couple different goals. It is trying to get you the job. That is ultimately, bottom line, what your resume is trying to do. And it does that by listing your experiences in education. It showcases your strengths and where you have succeeded and had success in your previous experiences. And it also lets a recruiter know how to get a hold of you and contact you. There are a lot of formatting guidelines and suggestions. So these are just some of the basics that we definitely want to focus on. I strongly recommend having a one-page resume. I don't feel there's always a good reason to spill onto a second page. I think you can make it happen on one page. Think of it as a challenge. If you are a master's student with some work experience or a non-traditional student who has a good amount of work experience prior to their education, consider two, but I would still challenge you to try to get all of your resume onto one page. I do recommend limiting the number of colors that you use on your resume. I will say in a previous position before Ford, I had to print out resumes for candidates who were being interviewed, and I printed them in black and white. So if you are going to use some color, do consider how your resume would look if it was in black and white and how those colors would translate to that. Um, excuse me. Sometimes changing the margins can be a really good way of getting a little bit more onto a one-page resume, but I do caution you to not make them smaller than a half inch on any side, just to make sure that it does present well. It doesn't have text spilling over to the side. And also, re recruiters do not have superhuman vision, so any text smaller than size 10 may be a little difficult to see. So try to keep your text 10 at a minimum. Larger would be great. You want to try to make sure you're utilizing all of the white space on your resume. So if you've filled out everything that we go over today and you have a little space at the bottom of your resume, consider adding another section. Maybe change your margins or your font size to try to fill up that page. You want your one page to look as full as possible. And I always recommend to students have someone else review your resume before you submit it for jobs. This could be a classmate, a family member, a teacher. If you are a university student, usually your career services office will offer this, and they're a wonderful resource that you can tap into. But very often, people are able to find little mistakes that you may have overlooked because you saw them so many times. So, getting that second set of eyes is always really helpful. There are 3 sections of your resume that I'm gonna say are highly, highly, highly recommended that you include. Your contact information, with this audience I'm talking to of university students, your education is definitely something to include, and then your work or project experience, which will be the bulk of your resume. For your contact information, you want to make sure you have your full name, a preferred name if that's different. For example, myself, I go by Sam. My full name is Samantha, so I would put both. Individuals who may go by a middle name or some other name, you can include that as well so that people know how you want to be addressed. Make sure you're including your phone number and your email address so that people could reach out to you to talk about the position you're applying for. It's up to you if you want to include an address with the city and state of where you currently are. And you could also include links to websites where you could get, or I could get more information about you as a candidate. This could be your LinkedIn, a GitHub, a portfolio, some other hyperlinked page. You could use hyperlinks, you could type out a URL, you could use a QR code, a couple different options for how you want to link to that further information. Your contact information is probably the most important part of your resume, so consider putting it at the top or somewhere else that's really conspicuous, maybe a sidebar, and use some larger fonts so it stands out, so it's easy to see, and that your name would be the first thing that somebody sees when they look at that page. These are a couple examples that you can see several different ways that people can write that contact section. The first, our coding candidate, including a GitHub and a portfolio link. Our research candidate telling me they want to be called Caddy and linking me to their publications. And then our finance candidate telling me that they are in Dearborn, Michigan, which is where Ford is headquartered. For your education section, so moving on to that, please do make sure you tell us what school you're going to, what degree you're getting. If your degree program has concentrations or majors, please do list those. When including your graduation date, I highly recommend doing the month and the year, especially if you're graduating outside of the more traditional May timeframe. If you're a December graduate, for example, that's really helpful to have that information in your education section. Including your GPA is recommended if it is a 3.0 or above. If it's below a 3.0, that's totally fine, but it's something I would leave off of your resume. There's a lot of other things you can include in your education section, optional based on your preferences, what you feel best represents you, and the types of experiences you think that the job is going to call for. So a couple different options that I have there in the optional section. The one I would want to point out, major specific GPA. If your major GPA is drastically different in a good way from your cumulative GPA, that's a really good way to highlight it. If maybe you had a semester or a class that didn't go in a way that reflects the rest of your grades, that's a really good way you can highlight that. Um, as a whole, it's very unlikely that you would need to include anything from high school or before, if yeah, from your high school years, unless it was a very unique accomplishment, a unique award, or something that you think is worth highlighting. And when I say that, examples of what I mean would be winning some kind of national event in a sport or being part of, Scripps National Spelling Bee champion, something that's extraordinary and is really above and beyond what you think your peers are going to be able to demonstrate. That's something you would want to include, even if it's before your university years. Here's two examples for education sections that we can see here. First, individuals listing their GPA, graduation date, and decided that their relevant coursework was something that they wanted to highlight. For the second individual, they wanted to point out that their major GPA was different in a good way from their cumulative GPA. So different ways that you can show that education section. Okay. Now, like I said, where we're going to spend the majority of the workshop time is on the work and project experience section. And I say it that way, work and project, because sometimes you may not have work experience that's relevant to what you're applying for, and your school project experience is going to be more applicable. And that's totally fine. You can include projects, you can include work, whatever you think is a good representation of you, what you've been able to do, and what you can do for your employer. You want to list the work and project experience in reverse chronological order. You want to start with the newest thing. So if you're currently working, you would put your current position at the top and then move backwards in time. Make sure you're listing the company name or the project that you were working on, along with the dates that you worked there or the semesters you worked on the project, and include your role. In a job, this could be your job title. In a project, it might be project leader or communications point person, whatever reflects your role in that project. And you're going to follow that with 3 to 5 bullet points describing what you did. And I've got some slides going more into that later on. I do want to add the little note here that this format may not be the best for someone who's using their education to pivot their career. Maybe you were working in one field and decided to go to school so you could start working in a different field. If this is you, if this describes your background, I would encourage you to look up what's called a functional resume format, which is a very different format, but would really focus on your skills and what you could bring to a new role, and a little less emphasis on past experience. So I'm not going to go more into that, but if that is you, I would encourage you to look up this functional resume format for your resume. All right. So this is probably the most intimidating part of writing a resume, is how you describe what you've done, how you describe what you've been able to accomplish and what you can do in the future. For each job or project that you're listing, we recommend putting the most relevant line of the description at the top. And that's something you might not be able to do until you've written the entire description. And then you can look and see, oh, maybe my third bullet point is the most relevant. Let me move that one to the top. So it's the first thing that somebody reads when they come to that section. You want to start each line of your description with an action verb and try to vary the ones that you use. If you're talking about your current job, you could use present tense. You don't have to. I actually will use all past tense in my resume, but either way, it works fine. But you do want to use past tense for any roles that you are no longer in. So for an example, for my current role, I could say presented resume workshop to interested students, attended career fairs during the fall 2021 recruiting season. Those are two things I did. I started with action verbs. You want to use numbers as much as you can if it's applicable. So with my previous example, maybe I would want to say attended 7 job fairs during the fall 2021 recruiting season. Any way that you can give a quantity to what you've been able to do really helps highlight what you were able to accomplish. So like I did, counting the number of things I attended, if you're able to put a number value to growth of something that you did, or financial savings you were able to accomplish, those are really great ways of using numbers to emphasize your accomplishments and your accolades. Try to call out your unique contributions or responsibilities. So these would be something that you added to a project that maybe the person sitting next to you didn't do. They did something different. Try to talk about what you did that was unique. This is your opportunity to brag about yourself. So do it. Talk about what you did well. Highlight skills that you used or things that you had to learn as a part of that role or that project. We're going to talk about skill sections a little later on, but there's an opportunity here. You can really highlight your skills, technical, non-technical, language, etc., to really show how you used those skills in a very real setting, be it project or work experience. Um, where possible, emphasize your strong results and accomplishments with numbers if possible. And if you had any challenges, like unique roadblocks that came up and you were able to overcome those, this is a really great way to talk about those by describing them as part of your experiences. Maybe you had, a project deadline that got moved. Maybe you were working at an internship when a major change in the company happened. This is a great opportunity for you to highlight those kinds of different experiences. All right, so if you've done all of the above and you still have some blank space, we want to use up all that white space. So these are a couple other sections that you could add to your resume if you feel it best reflects you, your skills, and what you're trying to go into. The skills section, specifically talking about technical skills, I would almost move that to a highly recommended if your background is in engineering, software, or other technical area. I have some examples of this on the next slide that we'll go into. Skills could be software technical skills. They could be your soft skills. Maybe you're really good at negotiations. It could be language skills. Maybe you speak a foreign language and you want to highlight that. A lot of different kinds of skills that you could have in a skills section. Um, for the purpose statement summary or profile, I will say, as someone who's read quite a number of resumes, very often this is not very tailored to the, I don't see purpose and summary or profile statements really tailored to what somebody's applying for. So if you want to add a purpose statement, summary, or profile statement, make sure that you're changing it for each job you apply to and making it very tailored and purposeful towards the job, telling me why you are the best fit, why you want it, why you're applying. If you're not going to put the time in to really tailor that line to each job, it's really kind of a fluffy part of your resume, and you could scratch it off and put something much more relevant into your resume. So be really purposeful around that. And under personal interests and hobbies, I always recommend make sure it is very relevant to the job or the industry that you're applying for. For example, here at Ford Motor Company, maybe you are somebody who enjoys working on automobiles in your free time, and you have, rebuilt a 1980 vehicle from the ground up. That's a personal project that's super, super relevant to what we do. Or if you're like me and you're a huge donut enthusiast, not as relevant to working here at Ford Motor Company. If I was working at Dunkin' Donuts, it might be more relevant, but I'm here at Ford Motor Company, so that's not something I would include on my resume. But I do really like donuts, in case anyone was wondering. And so here's some examples of what a skill section could look like. So you'll see for these three examples, they are grouped into areas such as software, databases, non-technical skills. Excuse me, feel free to group as you feel is best. It's going to depend on, what kind of skills you have, what job you're applying for, and also how much space you have on your resume. If you want to do columns, if you want to do long rows, really is going to be personal preference and based on what skills you do have. So just a couple examples of how you can group that to really highlight the things that you are knowledgeable in and could do for your employer. All right, we're moving through this pretty fast. We're gonna have a lot of time for Q&A, so please keep putting those questions in the chat. I'm getting a couple over on my side screen that we'll go over soon. So a few things that you want to avoid on your resume. We are specifically here talking about positions within the United States. And we don't usually ask that personal photos or personal information such as birthday, marital status, etc., would be on your resume. Recognize that that is different for some other countries, so please just be cognizant of that if you're applying for jobs outside of the U.S. that may be expected. But here in the U.S., we do ask that resumes avoid personal photos and personal information. When you're writing your description of your past projects or jobs, try to avoid paragraphs that are dense with text. As recruiters, we do tend to skim, looking for, certain things that are really going to stand out to us, and it's harder to skim a large paragraph. If something's in bullet points, you tend to stop and you read the lines a little bit more in depth than you might if it was one big block of paragraph text. I mentioned before sharing your resume with somebody who you trust to look over it. It's going to help you with spelling and grammar mistakes. It's going to give someone the chance to say, hey, you have this little, you use the wrong word, maybe affect switch or something like that, that someone might catch for you. That could be very helpful. Excuse me. Try to avoid abbreviations or jargon that's unique to your former employers. I know here at Ford, we've got a lot of alphabet soup, a lot of three-letter acronyms that we use and are very common within the company, but might not make sense to somebody else who is outside of our area. If you're in doubt, try asking somebody who's in the industry, but not specifically in the company you're applying for or the company you worked for. See if they know what it means. But when in doubt, spell it out. Tell me what that three-letter acronym is, or use more generic terminology that could let me know what it is that you're talking about. I'll often see resumes that say references available upon request. I actually recommend striking this off of your resume because, to be honest, if I want your references, I'm going to ask for them, no matter if you give me this permission or not. So if I want your references, I'm going to ask. You don't have to tell me that I can. So recommend taking that off and use up that white space and put something in there that's going to be very relevant to the job that you're applying for. So when I was putting together this presentation, I talked with my team and someone brought up the couple myths that they had heard candidates or students ask about resumes, and we wanted to address some of those. When you're listing work on your resume, it does not all have to be paid work. If you had a volunteer project or a school project or an extracurricular project, even if you didn't get paid for it, it can definitely be on your resume. If you had an unpaid internship, you can definitely put that on your resume as well. You don't have to only list jobs that you filed an I-9 for, right? Anything that helped you gain that experience would be really great to include on your resume. I'd heard the advice to not include graphic design elements on your resume. I think that is not true for everyone. I do recruit for some positions where I look for graphic designers. So someone who has some graphic design elements on their resume, they're using that opportunity to showcase their skills. So I think it's my advice on that would be varied based on what your background is and what you're applying for. So just be cognizant of that when you are putting any kind of graphic design elements on your resume. Resumes do not need to include everything you've done. You don't need to list every job you've had. You don't need to list every project you've done. Personally, I worked a fast food job when I was in high school, and that's not on my resume anymore. It was for a while, but it's no longer relevant to what I was applying for and the work that I do now. So I took it off. And that's definitely something that you can recommend that you can consider as you gain more experiences. You can revisit your resume, remove things that are less relevant, make sure you're continuing to add things that are more relevant. Resume is very much a living document. So let it evolve as you evolve as a professional. We have people ask us very often, what keywords need to be on my resume so I make it through, like there's some magical screen. And I will let you know that here at Ford, we do not use computers to read your resumes. So don't need to shove in every little keyword to your resume to make it through some magical screening robot. Real people read your resumes. I'm one of those real people. We read resumes for the applicants who pass our basic qualifications. Basic qualifications are listed on the job posting when you visit careers.ford.com and you find a position, it will list the basic qualifications. And your pass or not pass of those is not tied to your resume. Right. So you don't need to tell me on your resume specifically, yes, I have this degree. Yes, I have this many years experience, et cetera, et cetera. You'll be asked that during the application process. But just want to make sure that you don't feel that you need to cram in a bunch of keywords to your resume to make it through some screening bot. That's not how we screen resumes here at Ford. All right. So we've got a good amount of time here for Q&A. So this is wonderful. And so I saw a couple different questions come in. So we can take a look at that. So first question is, which majors / positions does Ford target in particular? And I really like this question. We have such a variety of positions here, and I'm going to speak specifically about internships and full-time roles because that's, y'all as students and me and university relations, probably what we're talking about. We do have a lot of technical skills and engineering skills based internships, but that's not everything. We have a large marketing, sales, and services team, a large finance team. We have some positions for those with legal backgrounds. I think we had found a position where we're looking for someone with the criminal justice background. I've definitely had positions for user experience designers, industrial designers, graphic designers. So there's a lot that goes into a large multinational company like Ford. So there's a lot of different skill sets that we look for. But I will say there is probably a little more emphasis on technical skills, engineering skills, as well as business skills. Those are really like the three areas, if I had to pick, where we have the most opportunities. But that's not to say if you fall outside of those three areas that there isn't anything. There's a lot of different opportunities here at Ford. As far as positions, I'll go back to my earlier slide. We within my realm, it's mostly going to be internships and full-time roles for new graduates. And that's what you'll find if you go to careers.ford.com and you search for student opportunities. Both of those types, the internship and the new grad, would fall under student opportunities. I hope that answers your question. Can we receive a copy of these slides? And my executive producer is telling me we can provide a PDF of these. So we'll work on getting that together. We are also trying to record this session. So it would be available on our YouTube channel. So if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, thank you for checking this out. I believe it's Ford Motor Company Careers is our YouTube channel. So you could reference this on there as well. What is the best advice to getting an internship? Wow. Oh my gosh, there's so much that we could say about this. Um, I usually my number one piece of advice, and it's very timely, is have a strong resume. Especially with our process here at Ford, the resume is a really integral part of the candidate review process. So making sure you have that strong resume, something that is free from errors, best represents you. That's really key. I think applying early is another key thing to make sure you are in that candidate stream as early as possible. And so, like I mentioned here at Ford, our major recruiting is in the fall. So for not this coming summer, but the following summer, 2023, we'll be posting positions in around September of 2022. So it is far, like a long time before the internship starts, but that's when we do a lot of our recruiting. So getting an application in early, and that's not to say rushing it, right? But to have that resume ready, which is why we're here today, so that when positions open up, you can be an applicant who's getting their foot in the door quickly. I think that's another piece of advice I would give. Would you recommend me to keep applying even if I get a rejection? I definitely would. Sometimes you may get a rejection if your background is not, maybe it's a 90% fit instead of 100% fit. There might be another role that is 100% fit. Especially here at Ford, once you've filled out the application the first time, it's a lot quicker to fill it out a second time. We've had candidates being considered for multiple roles, and that's not an issue for us. So I would definitely say apply to more than one position. Apply again if you got a rejection, because it might not be, rejections aren't always they're not always based on, how do I want to say this? Sometimes a rejection is because you missed one of the basic qualifications. And you might find that in a different position, you hit all of the basic qualifications. So look for a variety of different positions. Um, are there still internships available for this summer? So unfortunately for summer of 2022, we have filled our internship positions. So if you're looking for a full-time role starting 2023, or if you're looking for an internship position 2023, again, I would say come back and check us out in September. We do the bulk of our recruiting and hiring in the fall. So September through December is when we're getting through a lot of it. We do have some that will spill over to the beginning of the year, but very often we try to wrap up a lot of our recruiting before we go away for the end of the year holidays. All right, still got time for more of these. So please keep sending questions if you have more. If you develop questions as we talk, that'd be great too. Are there any extracurriculars that Ford likes to look for when hiring interns? This is a great question. It's going to depend a little bit on your background. I do know a lot of our teams love to see um, interest in our industry. So if you're at a school where you could join some kind of SAE, Society for Automotive Engineering, vehicle teams like a Baja team, Formula team, those show a strong interest in automotive. Maybe you like aren't in a degree program that's really applicable to anything that you can show any kind of leadership from an organization, that's really wonderful too. Maybe you're, vice president of the chess club or something like that. Showing that leadership is really great too. Any extracurriculars that you're involved in, and you can show, leadership or part of some kind of a planning committee, anything like that. I think that's really great to be able to show that you were involved on campus and that you have any kind of leadership organization, interpersonal skills. I think that's really helpful. If I did not fully answer that question, please let me know. I hope that answered that question for you. Give me one second. Okay. Do you appreciate it when a candidate reaches out to you via email or LinkedIn? This is a really great question. I like this a lot. I think it depends, right? Um, I appreciate when a candidate reaches out to me if they have applied or are just about to apply. I think that can be really great. I do get reached out to on Handshake quite a bit as well as LinkedIn. Um, Definitely have moved forward with candidates who reached out to me on one of those before. Um, it's a good way to connect if you have questions. I think it's really good, especially if you have specific questions. So, let's say, hey, Sam, I saw you posted an internship for human resources. I just wanted to clarify, like, what are the start dates I can anticipate for this? That's a really great question. Let me answer that and tell you about it. It's nice to engage in that back and forth. If you're reaching out to me and asking, do you have internships available, without having researched my company or looked at my profile or anything, that might not always be as appreciated. If I can easily say, if I can point you to, hey, they're right here. Try to do a little bit of background research. Try to do a little bit of digging yourself before you would reach out with questions. If you just want to introduce yourself, that's fine too. But I do ask normally that if you've done a little bit of research, you have a little bit of knowledge about how I fit into the company, what you want to do with the company and the company itself. That's always really appreciated. And I hope I answered that question. If I didn't, please let us know. Um, is a cover letter necessary since you mentioned a one and two page max slash our cover letter is important? So this is funny. This was like trending on LinkedIn the other day. So I don't know if that's why this is coming up, but I was reading a lot about this. And I know there are some people who are diehard cover letter fans and some people who never read cover letters. And I definitely fall between those two extremes personally. I don't always read cover letters. I will read a cover letter if I am on the fence about a candidate or if I feel like they're background or education isn't quite a fit. I'm kind of wondering, why is this person applying? Often you can explain that in a cover letter. And I would say your cover letter is not part of the one page for your resume. That I would consider that a completely separate document. And it could probably be a completely separate workshop for cover letters. Um, so yeah, I definitely am more on the not using cover letters side of things, but recognizing that every recruiter is different. So that's just my opinion. It doesn't mean every person's going to feel that way. I've talked to some recruiters that they have to get a cover letter. They love the cover letter. That's what they really feel is necessary. General advice there is, if you read the posting and it says to include a cover letter, then make sure you're including a cover letter. If the system is forcing you to upload a cover letter, then upload a cover letter. If it's not, it's really your judgment call. You could do it if you feel it better explains your background, why you're applying. I would say it's really your preference. But if you are going to do one, make sure that you have tailored it to the job you're applying for or the company you're applying for. And one thing to watch out for here is that if you're applying to multiple jobs within a company, sometimes the same cover letter will go towards all of those jobs. So if you say, maybe you submit a cover letter at Ford and it says, I'm really excited about this human resources job, but you also apply for a finance position, just recognize that that cover letter might be sent to both teams. So stick maybe with Ford, or see if you can upload different cover letters for each position. Just kind of something to note there. How often should I update my resume? Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. So when I was a student, I updated my resume probably once a semester, as things changed. Taking a look at what was on there, considering, did I do something that is more relevant this semester that I would want to replace what's on there? Did my GPA change? Things like that. Did my projected graduation date change? I think revisiting your resume once a semester while you're in school is really helpful. Once you've graduated, I know a lot of people will not look at their resume unless they're trying to get a new job. And that's fine. That's one way to do it. I did find when I was job searching that was a lot more work to try to make major updates on my resume when I was looking for a job. It's a lot easier to talk about what you're doing in your current role while you're still doing it. So if you do have the forethought to once every 6 months to once a year, taking a look at your current resume and saying, oh yeah, I did this, really unique thing with my job. Let me add that to my 3 to 5 bullet points. Or I only did this for 2 months and I haven't done that in a year. Let me take it off. So revisiting it often can be really good too. Um, so super awesome producer. That was the last question I had in my list of questions from my super awesome producer. So I'm gonna stop there. Thank you so much for everyone who is watching. If you're attending live, if you're watching a recording of this, super, super appreciate your time. It was great to have all of you here.